On today's show, rumor has it the Dallas Mavericks are in trade rumors all over the place. Kyle Kuzma, Daniel Gafford, Miles Bridges, all kinds of players. We'll talk about that. Who should the Mavs be interested in? Should they try to get in on Herb Jones, Dejounte Murray? We're playing a game of, what about this guy? On today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. The first and best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, leave a 5-star review, like the video, comment anything below. Let me know in the comment section which one player do you want the Mavericks to trade for. I want to know that. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And joining me from 105.3 The Fan, what you got for me, Reggie Adetula?
It's cold. Trying to stay warm.
It is cold, man.
That's really it. I can't wait until it's warm again. I don't know what it is about the cold. It's a small thing in life that somehow it ends up being a bigger thing in my life. And so life is better when it's warm.
You know what I hate is getting out of the shower and it's cold. Oh, it's just the worst. Like getting out of bed, touching your feet to the floor. It's like, it's all that.
The bathrobe does wonders for that. Getting out
but
of
you
the
got to
shower
get to the
cold.
bathrobe. That's the thing.
Why the bathrobe hangs right outside the shower for me, you know?
Maybe I should turn into a robe guy.
That's right. You should. It's great.
I'm gonna do that. I'll get it in monograms.
Ooh. I like that. That's a classy touch. Just LOM right there. I see it.
Yeah, I'll do it with the show. Not with anything in my life.
That was not the intention? Is that not what you meant? Okay.
Today's show, we're going to get into all kinds of trade rumors. Rumors about players that have been brought up. So later in the show, we'll talk about Dejounte Murray. Herb Jones, that's a real interesting name to me. Bruce Brown, talk about some of those guys. But first, we'll get into some of the players the Mavericks have been connected with over the weekend. There's many. How many do I got? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players the Mavs have been connected to.
You can turn over the whole roster that way.
Reggie and I are going to, yeah, right. Chuck them all out and bring a whole bunch of new ones in. Reggie and I will get into a bunch of those. So let's start with the one that's maybe the most interesting to me is the Washington Wizards. The Mavs have already made a trade with them with Kristaps Porzingis and sending him there. And so they already got a connection with that team. Kyle Kuzma, according to Mark Stein, the Mavericks are among a group of teams with interest in Wizards forward Kyle Kuzma. Later, Stein reported in his great Substack, literally must subscribe for all Mavs fans. The cost the Washington Wizards are reportedly looking for a better quality draft picks in exchange for Kyle Kuzma than the ones Toronto receiver Pascal Siakam. I find that really funny. He also said the Wizards sources say want at least 2 first-round picks for Kuzma, and the implications they will be seeking higher quality, blah, 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 because they didn't think that the picks that the Raptors got for Siakam were very good at all. Reg, first, thoughts on Kyle Kuzma, the fit and the player, and then let's get into the cost.
I have to caution myself because my initial thought whenever I see Kyle Kuzma is like, he's just out there getting cardio, like all the time. That's my thought when I see him playing basketball.
The whole Wizards team, to be honest.
That's the thing is like there's so much Wizards on them, right? Like
cardio, occasional buckets. That's the diagnosis for the Wizards.
It is just AAU basketball at a professional level, and so I have to try and harken back to when he played for the Lakers. And I mean, he can be a really good player within the context of a good team. I don't know. There's a lot of guys that fit this very particular mold that you're looking for, right? That kind of that big combo big that can play the 4 in that spot that you're looking for right now. But the thing about it is, and I'm trying to, there's a lot of I wants, and it's like, what's realistic? And I want a guy who could shoot, right? And I want a guy who can play defense in those places. And Kyle Kuzma is like, in both of those regards. Plus, like, I feel like he's best suited when you can get him on the basketball. You don't really need any more of those on this team.
You need like a tertiary player to do that. But then that can't like be their main skill. That's been kind of one of the problems with finding a player to fit the Luka Kyrie collective, right? Is that those guys both are amazing with the ball in their hands. So you need somebody that doesn't need the ball in their hands as the third guy and is also amazing defensively. They're not going to get that with Kuzma.
No.
Now, do I think he could help? Yes, with size, for sure. He's 6'9". He's bigger than pretty much every player the Mavericks play except for Derek Lively. And so that it would be helpful. He has played on a championship team. He played on that Lakers team, and when he did, he played good defense. He hit a decent number of threes. He's never really been a great three-point shooter.
Right.
But we just saw Derrick Jones Jr. come into the Mavericks and make a ton of threes. So
right. It feels like what you should do with all these players is not just go and look at the basic 3-point shooting percentage, but look at what their corner shooting percentage is, especially if you can get that, like, kind of the
unguarded catch and shoot.
Yes, absolutely. And when you start seeing those numbers, and I think when you do that, when you did that with Derrick Jones Jr. coming in, you're like, oh, okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
And so if you go look at that number, it makes you feel a lot better about these players because those are the shots that you're going to get in theory.
I listened to Simmons and Lowe this weekend. And one thing that Bill Simmons said I found interesting, I want your take on. He said, I get nervous about these players that like have these championship runs. They're a part of this playoff team. They go on a deep run in some way and learn all these skills. And then they go play for like the effing Wizards for 3 years. Do you lose some of that stuff? Like, do you lose some of those intangibles? Do you lose the ability to like sit up in your chair like when you're playing, or do you just become like Jordan Poole, the fastest from going from championship level to just completely falling off on the Wizards because the habits and the things just aren't there when you play, like the discipline, I guess.
I don't know, man. I don't know if Jordan Poole is the example we wanted, especially if we're using the word discipline. We saw some of the shots that Jordan Poole took. Like, dude, do you think your stuff?
That's what he went from, like at least a little on the Warriors to like 0 on the Wizards, and it's not gone well.
But I mean, I think that's some of the idea here is like, I don't think you lose it entirely, but I think it's an indication of what the right circumstance does for certain players. And so, I think that you would have to assume, or you'd have to hope that if you have indeed put together a championship level culture, right, that you can slide in and do that. And I think that that's why places like Miami, when they start talking about heat culture, as annoying as it can be, like there's something to that. Guys have to get in there and they understand that they have to fit in, and then that helps them straighten up and sit up straight or whatever.
As the Locked On Mavs podcast, have to disagree. There's nothing to that.
Fair enough. You know what?
Heat culture is garbage. I can't.
I got to use my head. Wrong example to use. My bad. But no, I think the concept still pops up. I look, Kuzma, especially in lining up with that Jordan Poole thing, like Kuzma was one of those guys that looked a little silly even in that context of a championship run. So like, it makes me wonder if he leans more towards what you're seeing now, where it's like, oh, he's out here getting cardio, as opposed to like he can be a championship player within that structure, especially because the Grant Williams acquisition has demonstrated something to me, at least. I feel like I've taken something from it, which is, okay, I was expecting Grant Williams to like come intrinsically motivated, and not just like motivation is the wrong word, but intrinsically defensively acclimated. Right?
He was motivated.
Right. I thought that, okay, like the defense is going to come from within there. He has that within him, right? And those types of things. And it's like, oh no, like that's more of a contextual aspect. And I feel like Kuzma is more of a context player as opposed to he's bringing this as a foundation. And I think that that's probably the distinction that you're trying to make when you're looking at who you bring in here.
The cost for him, the 2 firsts, you can squint and like Mavs do have 1 first they can trade. And then maybe they count Omax. Maybe they count, well, they could have some swaps too. They also, you could squint and Omax just was drafted first round. Maybe they think Hardy is a first round value. So like you can make it work. I don't know that those are the quality first round picks that the Wizards are asking for in this. Right. The other one that's interesting with the Wizards is Daniel Gafford. This is a name that gets brought up to me literally anytime we ever do a conversation about trades ever. There's a comment about Daniel Gafford. He's 25. He's a center on the Wizards. He's like, not really a rim protector, but he can. Not really like a big rebounder, but he can. He's not really like a low post scorer, but he can. You know, it's like all those things where he's just good enough. The Locked On Wizards guys, Brandon Scott and them, like to say he's probably a backup. Like he's probably Isaiah Hartenstein, right?
Yep.
Where you like, he's just a really good backup and you can just plug him in and that's where he should be. And the problem is they paid him last year. You know, his contract's not that crazy. He's making $12 million this year, $13 million next year, and $14 next year. That's like kind of a lot for a backup center. Yeah. But the Mavs starting center is making like $5 million, $6, $7 million right now. And so the Gafford one is really interesting to me because if you think he can come in and fix that problem with the backup center position, which I think he could, if the Mavs could send 2 seconds and get him for, you know, like the Rashawn Holmes contract and 2 seconds, if that would get it done, dang, like do that. The problem is he's starting for them right now. Like I don't know would they want like some kind of replacement in return? And then could you get both of them? That's the other thing.
Look, it seems like Nick, you host podcasts by yourself a lot. You've covered the points, like down to the name that I was going to bring up in Isaiah Hartenstein. I mean, literally, like those are all the things that I was thinking about. He absolutely profiles as a backup big that does all, a little bit of everything, exactly what you need in certain circumstances. And I think that the one thing that you maybe say when it comes to him in general is like fitting into something is he playing with the Wizards right now. I imagine that being in a situation where you have an opportunity to win in a really constructive way would be appealing. And yeah, I imagine that, especially because we're seeing the inflated asking price in the market. I feel like what we're going to see is the deadline make deals effect of this, where we start getting closer to the deadline and people get a little bit more reasonable on some of their asks. And so, no, I think that would be absolutely a place I'd be very happy to hear if we come up in early February and it's like, hey, the Mavs are, finalizing a deal. I'd be like, yeah, fantastic. Because that seems like absolutely a player that would work.
To me, it seems like the Kuzma one is far-fetched as far as value, because I don't think the Mavericks have what the Wizards are going to want unless they want Omax or Hardy. The Gafford one is definitely viable. I don't think you could get them both together unless you give up a bunch of stuff. But I do think both would help. I think Gafford would help for sure. And so I'm interested in what you guys think about that. Let me know in the comment section about either of those guys. Coming up, bunch of other names. Should the Mavs consider Miles Bridges? Rumor has it that they are, but should they be considering him? What about Quentin Grimes? What about some other names? We'll talk about all those guys coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. It's the start of the new year, and every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. How can we integrate Taylor Swift content into our marketing? No, they're asking who they can turn to take their business to the next level. You want to find the right people that will be there in your jobs. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It has the vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy. You have so many qualified candidates in front of you. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. If you're looking for somebody, I've been one of these people trying to hire somebody for a job. The Locked On Wizards job. It took me forever to find somebody to fill the Locked On Wizards podcast host position. And LinkedIn Jobs can help you with that. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they do apply.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening. We have a 24/7 stream on Locked On Sports Dallas to try all the other Dallas shows. We've also got the subtext if you want to get some of these rumors sent straight to your phone, get Mavs news straight to your phone, and all kinds of stuff. I send game day updates. I do all kinds of stuff on that. So subscribe and text with me. That's kind of the whole point. All right, Reg. According to our friend Matt Moore from Locked On NBA, Locked On Nuggets, as well as the Action Network, he reports that Miles Bridges, who put his wife in the hospital 2 years ago, is a popular trade target. Sacramento, Detroit, and Dallas are mentioned as teams who have showed interest. To me, it's a non-starter. From what this team has gone through in the past on the business side with the harassment, with the allegations, there's been domestic violence in the Mavericks organization as well. That wasn't as like it was obviously reported and it was out there, but it wasn't like the biggest story. But they have had that. They just went through hiring Jason Kidd, and so I can understand why the Mavs are interested in Miles Bridges as a player. To me, though, I don't even consider him as a player, like as a target for the Mavericks, because it's just a non-starter for me. The level that it was, what happened, and if you want to bring that person in and then make that person part of your team culture, I think that you're playing a rough game. Now, if you look to corporations for your morals, you're not necessarily going to find it in the best way. But I'm somebody that tries to look at it positively and say, hey, like we've got to take a turn here with this franchise, because they've been through a lot, they've tolerated a lot, and I don't think this is something that should be tolerated.
No, I don't think it should. And I think you mentioned one of the things that kind of, I don't know, concern maybe is that not the right word, but you mentioned the idea that, they hired Jason Kidd. And I mean, it felt like it was relatively swatted away. I don't know how you felt on that. And so I don't know how.
I don't want to gloss over that. On the Jason Kidd front, that was something that I was very vocal about because of all the other reasons. And his, when he had the domestic violence situation, it was a long time ago, and he sat down with St. Marshall. They talked through his journey to coming back. I think people should get a second chance. I don't know that. I don't know what Miles Bridges has gone through. So maybe I don't have enough knowledge to know that. It just seems like it's so recent, and I don't know what he's gone through as far as change and what he's done as a person. Like that's all things you have to consider. And do the Mavericks have that intel? Like, do they know those things? Do they have that? I don't have it. So with what I know, this is my opinion on it.
Yeah, and I think that now we're delving into like a whole different level of conversation. Right. But I think one thing that you have to consider as an organization that is a forward-facing one that you are selling to a public audience, not everybody will have that. And so there is something to be said for your history, your past as an organization, and how it is not shining in this regard. And so adding another character that has had these issues, and that's just put it like very lightly and very mildly, because I know there's people that were like, hey, call it what it is. I think that's real cautionary ground to tread upon. But like you mentioned, right, corporations are going to act in their best interest, especially when there's incentive. And basketball is a really weird place because, hey, man, you already need a elite level of talent and skills. And then we've also like pared down the population in such a big way because you can't be 5'5" doing those elite skills, right? Like there's a small level of population that lives up to the size of this. So the incentive structure is such that they're going to lean to these things. And ultimately, like I don't think I have a good answer in regard to that portion of this, because like we are again looking to, in this instance, particularly the team, but then even the NBA that has allowed him to continue playing, to mete out the level of morality that we want to see in this world. When in all reality, in a perfect situation, that should be handled by like our government structures, our legal structures, and those types of things. And they're not very good at this. And so ultimately we end up, twisting ourselves in pretzels, trying to pick up the slack for a system that is broken and does not work properly. And so, it ends up being a really tough circumstance to be in, having to have these conversations all the way around. But to circle back to like the basketball of it all, I also I have found it very hard to view him as a player since we found out about, the things that happened with his wife and the ways in which she was in the hospital at his hands. Right. I have not thought about him in that such way. And so I do wonder like if he even fits in the way that you really want him to. I know that he's putting up points. And I think one thing you mentioned that's really interesting is culture, that to be fair, I had not given enough of a consideration for, because one thing about this organization is that, the culture matters. And it seems like they're starting to really, coalesce around.
They've been touting it recently a lot too.
Yeah.
Where they've been like pointing it out, saying, hey, we have a bunch of good guys. Cuban's been saying it on every podcast and show he's been on. Oh, we just have such a bunch of just really good guys. And like, I don't know. Can you still do that if you have Miles Bridges on your team? And would that still be of value? Your point about that we have to discuss this and talk about this because he shouldn't be in the workforce like right now with what he's done. But because of the systems in place, like in our country, sometimes it just doesn't, like it's left up to the leagues and it's left up to the employer, which is very strange. All right. That's it. That's what I got on Miles Bridges. And so I won't bring it up again unless he gets traded here, and then we'll see what happens then. A couple other players that Mavs have been connected to. Quentin Grimes reportedly is frustrated in New York, and the Knicks are actively trying to trade him. Enter the Dallas Mavericks, who always enter when a Knicks player is going to be traded in some way. This is from Stefan Bondi from New York Post. The Dallas Mavericks are a team with interest in Grimes. Mark Stein reported that they want a scoring guard to replace Emmanuel Quickley. I got a trade for you.
Okay.
I'm going for the future. I do Tim Hardaway Jr. and Seth Curry. They replace that scoring. They get the Knicks replace that scoring in a way that they wanted. Maybe not exactly the right way that they wanted, but they get it. They get Tim Hardaway back. The Mavs get sent Quentin Grimes, and they get Evan Fournier's contract.
Oh, never Google. Okay.
Yeah. It's a move for the future because Quentin Grimes is young.
Right.
He's, a 6'5" wing that's a real good shooter. I mean, you throw him out there with Luka, it would be amazing. And so you're betting on the talent going forward and say, all right, we're going to basically take our Tim Hardaway piece, make him younger and better at certain things, and we'll try that. Are you interested in that?
I'm somewhat interested in that, but that still kind of feels like, hey, what do you not want? I'll trade you the things that I don't want. And, and of course that's a little bit harsh when you, especially the way that Tim Hardaway Jr. is played, and of course the level of stability that Seth, or like comfortability that Seth has when it comes to this organization, particularly Jason Kidd. But yeah, I don't know that these are the waters that you necessarily need. These are moves around the edges, right? Like these are not waters that are like moving the big pieces of foundation that you're trying to work on. At least I think that you should be working on this year. But yeah, no, I mean, I'd be interested in that. I also be interested in hearing what the Knicks organization says to that, right? As a response. Maybe they feel so confidently in the pull-up scoring of Tim Hardaway Jr. and I guess that's ability that Seth Curry can bring. But yeah, I don't know how they respond to that. But I'm interested in like the youth movement of it all, and I guess especially if you feel very comfortable in Dante Exum being that other ball handler for you.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, I wouldn't consider Tim or Seth a ball handler for you. So the Mavs are limited in that front too. Coming up, though, let's talk about AJ Griffin. Let's talk about some of the other wings the Mavericks could be interested in and some of the players that are being shopped around the league right now. Man, flying by. We'll get into all that coming up. Today's episode brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp helps you. I'm going through a time in my life right now I just did not think. There are times in your life that you just never thought would happen, that you start going through and you start dealing with the anxiety, the stress, the worry, the everything about it. And I couldn't have got through it without my therapist and without the online therapy that I'm going through. I've used BetterHelp in the past, and it's a great way to get your therapy entirely online, convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. So you can just pick, you don't have to drive anywhere and go to a thing. You can do therapy in the comfort of your own home. And underrated part about online therapy, you can put it like on a laptop or an iPad or somewhere and go to any room in your house. You could do the like lay down on the couch thing like they do in the movies if you really wanted to. You could get away with that. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today. Get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Go check it out today. Today's episode also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds and lines. Oh man. My family is from the Michigan area. They're loving the Detroit Lions, and we've got to check out Lions 49ers. I'm bringing Reg back in. Lions 7-point underdog to the 49ers. 7 points. I feel like I would take that because are they going to cover the 7 points even if the 49ers win?
I'm not inclined to believe that. I know I gave some friends some level of advice that I probably shouldn't have now that I think about it about the Packers, but I do believe in the Packers' ability to play a close game in a way that I'm not sure. I feel like the Niners might be able to open that thing up, especially if you start getting after Jared Goff. But hey, now again, I'm not the perfect at this.
If you believe in the Super Bowl logo colors theory, have you seen this? Where
yes, I have.
The colors of the Super Bowl logo are what, like purple and red? Then it's 49ers Ravens, and that's what's going to happen. So
I've been told from time to time that there's a script, at least jokingly. So.
If you know what that script is, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get what's coming to you. Go put down some money on all that, and you can get bonus bets on that as well. FanDuel.com/LockedOn.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
That's what you do to my betting advice. You shut it down.
That's right. Mine too, to be honest.
All right, Reg, let's get in. We got a bunch of names to still get to I want to talk about. AJ Griffin, the Mavs are listed with the Knicks, the Rockets, and the Bulls. There's another team believed to be interested in the buy low second-year man, AJ Griffin, who has fallen out of the rotation. That's according to Matt Moore. What are your thoughts on the Mavs interested in some of these guys? Quentin Grimes, AJ Griffin, these shooters, 6'5", wings. It feels like the Mavs already have those. It feels like, shouldn't they just invest in the ones they have? Thoughts on their interest in those guys?
You know what my response is, or the immediate thought? Oh, the Mavs have a type. Like that's what this is, right? You have a type. That's what happened here. Like especially because again,
I think 6'5",
right?
6'5".
Oh, and you shoot a little bit.
And you can shoot.
You want to exchange numbers?
He got money.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit.
Brunson.
No,
popcorn.
Right. I do wonder, and I feel like we talked about this before. Like, I felt like this year you were going to try and answer some questions on some question marks on your roster. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, let's get different question marks is what some of these are. Because Quentin Grimes also like somewhat of a question mark. AJ Griffin like shot really
rotation
well
in Atlanta.
Right. Shot really well, and then all of a sudden, like this year, you have, and I'm not exactly even sure what happened with him this year, where the numbers have gone down, and he's fallen out of favor, right? Like I'm not exactly sure what that is. And so maybe, you know, they have done the basketball scouting to be like, we know what that is. And in this circumstance, that'd come around. Cool, I guess. Right. But I don't know. What are you giving up? What are you doing in these situations? And I guess if it's it is a sell low situation. So maybe that's cool. But I don't know that necessarily you're like, hey, let's get more question marks in this circumstance.
It feels like the Mavs don't have enough guaranteed shooting. Isn't that weird? They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league, and they don't have enough guaranteed shooting. Because you've got a shaky Derrick Jones Jr. at times. You've got a shaky Dante Exum at times. A non-shooting Derek Lively, a non-shooting Dwight Powell, a shaky shooting now Maxi Kleber. We've got to maybe admit that at this point. A streaky hot and cold Tim Hardaway Jr. You've got Curry, who's not hitting well, and that hasn't really worked. You've got Hardy, who's up. Like, you've just got a bunch of question marks there. And so it feels like they're looking for a guarantee in that spot. I want to talk about some of these bigger names, though. Dejounte Murray. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, Atlanta's ready to trade Dejounte Murray. They're engaged with a lot of teams. They gave up a lot for him. 2 of their own first-round picks, a pick swap, a 3rd first-round pick. They want to get some value back for him. And according to KOC from The Ringer, from people I've spoken with, the Hawks are asking for 2 firsts in return for Murray, who would prefer to join a team with a chance of making an immediate playoff run. Your thoughts on Dejounte Murray, the type of player that he is on the Mavs?
Why? I thought we pretty much like ball dominant guards. No, thank you. Like, that's just not something that you have the space for, right?
He's also 6'5".
That's type. Count it. No, it's just like, look, man, I thought that was an understanding, is that the guard room is like, at least at the high end, right? Like the high end of your guard rotation, that is where we get into like the basketball truism. There's only one basketball. Like we can't make this go with all of these various people. And I don't know that I like that as an addition at all.
It's not working with Trae Young. So would it work with Luka? I don't see that.
Well, I mean, Luka is better than Trae Young. We do know this.
Definitely. But like the styles, like to have the ball a lot in their hand,
right?
You know, like he also made an all defensive team in 2018, and his defense has really fallen off since then. It really has not been the same level, and so you're not going to get that. I don't think that all defense level player on the Mavs. Maybe he goes to a different location, and all of a sudden it's change of scenery, and he's much better. Could be, but to me, the cost wouldn't be worth what he would bring to the team, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, you would be limiting his son in that way. I don't think he could reach the heights that you would even be able to want him to reach in this context.
Herb Jones. According to Matt Moore, the Pelicans are thought to be open to moving Herb Jones. They're high on Jones, but it'll be difficult for the team to pay their stars. They've got Zion, Ingram, CJ McCollum. They're gonna have to pay Trey Murphy the third. They're gonna have to pay Herb Jones too. And it's just it also just feels like it doesn't fit sometimes, but Herb Jones is amazing. And this is the one player of all these players that we've mentioned so far that I would look at and say, what's the price? Pay it. Because this would be an investment in your future. Herb Jones is the exact type of player the Mavericks need, where it's how can we update or upgrade the Derrick Jones Jr. spot? How about put a literal all defensive player in that spot? He's 25. He's 6'8". He's an amazing defender. You've seen it 4 times this year if you've watched all the Mavericks games. Like, this is one where you'd go, all right, I'm going into the tank, and I'll pay anything basically, because he is somebody that would give the Mavericks something that they really need, and that's elite wing defense.
And you would never have to hear Jason Kidd mention his name when it comes to effort. Crazy good effort, right. Dude. That's right. Like all those things. Like, he is the perfect sign up. You mentioned he's young, mentioned he shoots. Also, like, not context dependent on his game, right? He is an isolation defender, right? He is who is your best player? We will put him on him.
And they need that so bad.
So badly. Sign me. Like, the name popped up and I was like, sign me up immediately. And so, yeah, I'm in the same place as you. Herb Jones will be fantastic. Get if you could get him.
If they're asking 2 firsts for like Kuzma and Dejounte Murray, wouldn't that be like the same price for Herb Jones? But maybe like less. Like, could they get him for a first and like the first and Josh Green package, or the first and maybe Omax package? Would you do first and Omax? And let's do first Omax and Hardy. We'll give him a guard too.
I'm leaning towards yes, because I mean, like, isn't the idea? Not the guarantee for you?
No. I'll take the guarantee. I'm with you. Like, I'll take the guarantee.
Because I'm like, the idea is like, hey, this draft, like, Omax could even turn into Herb Jones, right? Like, that's basically what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he'll even be a Herb Jones. You got him, right? Like, put that in.
It could even be a boat.
Right, exactly. There you go. And so, like, I think the situation is also, I imagine that makes Luka smile, right? Like, we are pushing the window a little bit closer to opening. And I think that's somewhat what I think the Mavs fans, and if I do understand correctly, it does seem like that's also what the organization is trying to do. Hey, let's get to that contention as soon as possible. That's a contending player, 100%.
Can get to it as soon as possible, but also we've invested now in a Lively and in Omax and in a Josh Green and in a Hardy, and like they're still trying to be young and like walk and chew gum at the same time, being like get to a title, but also have some stuff in the future to look to, right? Like
fair enough.
Trying to straddle that line. Herb Jones would be straddling that line for sure. That's one I would just go all after. Last one is Bruce Brown. This is a strong belief already bubbling league-wide. The Raptors will move newly acquired Bruce Brown before the buzzer sounds. Toronto can't aggregate his contract with any other players in a follow-up trade, so it'd have to be just him. I listened to Zach Lowe, and he mentioned that he thinks that Bruce Brown could be had for a first. Would Bruce Brown be somebody you would want for a first-round pick?
I don't think so. Like, even though I like Bruce Brown as a player, an undersized guy that gives you kind of like some power forward stuff.
Close to 6'5", close.
Right? You squint and maybe he's the type, right?
Put in the right shoes, in the right lighting, he's 6'5".
Yeah, I just look, in championship player, right? Like he's a culture guy. I just don't know that. I don't know what it's going to be. What's going to make it worth my while that you're sending out for that deal to be worthwhile. Plus, isn't it basically like a 1-and-1 that he's on?
Yeah, it is kind of a strange deal. He's $22 million this year, $23 million team option next year.
Right. And so like I don't even love the contract for what you're doing there either. I don't know. I wouldn't understand exactly what the end goal was with trying to get him.
His profile picture on Basketball Reference is him with this goofy smile with this just like thin mustache.
That was the day after he signed that 1-and-1. He was like, "We got it. We did it, baby. We cashed out.
I don't need any of the other facial hair, but I need this one line. I need this pencil. Looks like it's drawn on with a mascara crayon or whatever, colored pencil or whatever."
There you go.
Yeah, this one is interesting to me. He definitely fit. I feel like the Mavericks have needed a player like this. I've wanted Josh Green to fill into this role where he can handle the ball a little bit, where if Luka's out, Kyrie's out, he can handle the ball a little, be that secondary creator when one of those guys is off the floor. He doesn't shoot the ball particularly well. Even when he played on Denver that one year, it was about 36% from three, and that's playing with Jokic. But he does a lot of stuff that a championship team needs. So,
yeah, look, that is fair, and you put it in that perspective. All right, cool. I also wonder, like, what is the ask in that instance? Do you have any general idea what that might look like?
Well, Zach Lowe was saying it could be just like a first, because it is a weird 1-year contract. Then you've got to figure out what to do with him. He's also not as young as you think. He's 27. He'll be 28 in August. So by next year.
I mean, for a team that don't really got first out the wazoo here.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Would you like the big question that they're asking? I probably should have done this at the beginning. The big question the Mavs are asking is an incremental move forward right now good enough, and then make another incremental move next, like this offseason when we'll have 3 first-round picks, depending on how many if they give up the one this year. So I think they have to. So my whole thing is I think they have to make a move that addresses the present and the future. Isn't that great? Isn't that a great place to be where you got to do both?
We got to answer all the questions a little bit right now.
That's right. And they've got to be bigger, and they can't be 6'5" because we just can't. Go listen to Reggie Adetula on The Fan this week. Turn it on, leave it on. Unless you're listening to Locked On Mavs.
That's right.
And so go check them out there. Guys, thanks for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out. Boom.